Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Oh boy, what happened to the light? It just disappeared. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 830 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, and it is another gray day here at the Beaver Lodge. Yesterday was a little warmer, got to about 0, maybe even a little bit above, and we are getting ready to go into a rather cold snap, at least tomorrow. Temperatures are going to plunge tomorrow, so going to enjoy a little bit of a non-deep freeze today for what is to come. I had a friend say that it was going to last the entire weekend. I don't know if that's the case. I looked it up and it didn't seem that that was going to be the case, but tomorrow is going to be rather rather crisp. Let's put it that way. And the day after will be a little less so, but still a little colder than we've been getting lately. Right now, it's actually above 0 here at the Beaver Lodge, but by the time we get to 8 a.m. or around this time tomorrow morning, it'll be -8, feels like -16, and it's just gonna keep dropping to -17, feels like -26. So that's basically, in real numbers, about a 20-point swing in a little more than 12 hours, and but it's going to be just a quick dip and then back up again. So hopefully, people will be able. It'll give people an excuse to snuggle and cuddle a little more. There you go. Because there's never a bad reason for a little snuggle, right? It's not like you need an occasion. But when it gets a little cold, yeah, maybe it's a nice way to keep warm. Let's put it that way. Kids and cubs. Oh, a big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health today? Mine is doing pretty well. A little short on sleep because yesterday we played curling, and of course, well, I shouldn't say of course, but we won again. Yay! It was a close match for the first 3 ends. We were at 3-2, and then at some point we broke the score open and ran away from it. Got to end a little early, which is nice because it was a 9:20 p.m. Start. So that means that 40 minutes into the match, we're already past my desired bedtime in order to be able to get a full 8 hours to do the show before doing the show. So that's not happening. you know when the day starts, that's not happening. So a bit of a shorter night. I am feeling a little bit of headache, a little bit of eyes burning, but I will have the opportunity for a nap at some point later today, and I will take it at that point. I will really take it. At least I hope I'll have an opportunity for a nap later today. It might not be until the early this evening, actually. But uh, we will push through, as we say. All right. Let's see. What do we have for you today? Well, we have the Dam Fam here in the chat. Just um, uh, chatting away, I guess is the word for it. My vocabulary is really great today. But no, good conversation in there already. There's a lot that has been going on. So there's lots to talk about. But today we are going to focus our attentions on the Prime Minister's visit to China. As I believe he's probably already on the ground there. I don't know what time it is at the moment, and but his plane did leave last night from BC. Yep, he probably might have just landed actually. It said that he was scheduled to land at 8:45 p.m. local time, and it's literally just past that right now. Um, but before he left, of course, he had a meeting with coastal First Nations, and it went about the way that everyone could expect it went based on past meetings he's had. That um, people there claimed that they felt that they were indeed heard, and they had some positive things to say about the meeting. But the main position when it comes to having a pipeline going through their territory and having a port, at least for the First Nation, that is closest to the area where the actual port would be, um, the answer is still no. It's always been no. It's still no. And there has not been any opening of the door on that particular front. There's been opening of the door on many other fronts, and but not that one. So it's going to be interesting to see how things evolved, and we'll definitely have more on that during the show as well. But yes, the Prime Minister is off to China, or is in China at the moment, and while he is there, he is going to be meeting today specifically with the number two and the number three in the country, and that would be Premier Li Qiang, who he's met with before, and according to iPolitics, he's described as nominally caretaker of China's economy and in charge of its cabinet, and the number three, Zhao Leji, I think that's how you would pronounce that, chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. And then tomorrow is his scheduled one-on-one with his counterpart, President Xi Jinping. Um, so, and he's there for a total of 3 days. It was also announced yesterday, very briefly, uh, very briefly, I think we might have mentioned it briefly on the show, that the Prime Minister is also scheduled to have a trip to India very soon. And that is also part of the strategy to diversify our trade. Very China and India being two of the world's largest markets, the two most populous nations on the planet, there's definitely a lot of opportunity there, particularly now that we have the motivation that's being provided by the United States, being a much more unreliable partner to go out to the rest of the world and do some trade. Um, Here, according to Mason Maharaj of CBC News, talking about the India aspect being added to this, and you will see why it is I'm talking about it here a little later on the show. After more than 2 years of fractured diplomatic relations, Prime Minister Mark Carney will visit India in the coming weeks as both countries look to diversify trading partners in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. India's High Commissioner to Canada, Dinesh Patnaik, told CBC's Power and Politics host David Cochrane the trip will take place after India tables its budget on February 1st. Patnaik said the renewed diplomatic ties are a sign that, quote, trust is back in the system, and diplomats are, quote, catching up on work missed amid what he called, quote, a slight gap in relations. That is uh, that's a very diplomatic understatement. That gap began when former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau alleged that Indian agents were linked to an extrajudicial killing of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil in 2023. And the RCMP also accused agents of India's government of involvement in homicides, extortion threats in Canada. The allegations led to a deep freeze in Canada-India relations that has only started to thaw in recent months. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has denied ordering extrajudicial killings in Canada. Quote, we've always said it's preposterous and absurd. It's something we won't do, said Patnaik. And so I think we read a little bit of this into the record yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Um, the trip to India that's coming um, is based similar to the one in China that's happening right now. Is They have similar stories, right? We had a dispute of some type with the government of the nation that we are visiting, and at least, and there was retaliation by the governments. In the case of China, we had the issue with Meng Wanzhou, where we detained her at the request of the Americans, and we held her here, and we have an extradition agreement with the United States. So it was looking like we were going to extradite her, and China tried to put pressure on us with various sanctions, various tariffs, and the engaging in what we called hostage diplomacy by seizing Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, two Canadian nationals, and holding them, and you know, trying to pressure us to apply China law in Canada. And it wasn't until Trump lost the first time around and the United States was going to get Joe Biden, who definitely was not going to side with China on this, that China decided that they didn't want to stay in this battle for 4 more years. And then all of a sudden there came an agreement that Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig would be released, and that Meng Wanzhou would go back to China. And then with India, of course, we have all the reports of basically the government being alleged to have supported in some ways um, extrajudicial killings and, for example, extortion and other stuff, other crimes of the sort on Canadian soil. And of course, as we mentioned here, that the government denies they've done. But I believe I saw in the chat someone mentioning that nobody's backing us up on that, and that's not exactly true. We did get backed up by a court case, and that was filed in the United States, alleging similar things that had happened in the United States, and the court documents and in the charging documents that were released, there are some links to Canada in that either Canada gave the United States some information that would help them bring those charges and back and forth, and that there were even some players, similar players in both stories that, uh, I mean, not necessarily playing as big a role in the United States as they played in Canada because geographically, we are in different places, and the players there are able to do different things depending on where they are. But that there were some links between the two stories. So we didn't get the backup in the sense that another nation stood up and said, yeah, what Canada is saying as soon as we said it. But several months later, when those charging documents came down in the United States, it was like, oh, okay. So it's not just us, and there are a lot of parallels and similarities, and even some common players that have been involved. So there is a lot of hesitancy, and there has to be a lot of caution in the way that we engage in that in trade with nations such as those that are not afraid to use their power in certain ways in order to influence things. We have at least one nation that has a history of appreciating situations where they have the opportunity to save face. If there has been a mistake, I would suspect it's the same with both nations. But with China, we know that this is established. With India, our relationship was more trade related, and the political stuff seems to be newer. The political, as India is, of course, emerging as a big player on the global stage. More of these entanglements are going to happen more often, and we're going to have more to say about those things. And chances are that we will butt heads a little more often. That's only natural as a country becomes an ever increasing power, because countries have interests and not friends, and not all interests. Not all interests dovetail together, even among the closest of allies. Let's put it that way. So, on that front, however, um, the RCMP, when it comes to India, the trip that's coming, threw a little grenade into the mix. And I'm starting with India because similar things are happening with the trip to China. And it's just kind of interesting that all the grenades seem to be landing at the exact same time as the prime minister is about to land in China, which is when these things came up or was in the plane and on the way. And then, with soon after it's announced that he's planned to go to India, comes the other grenade. And the grenades come from four sources specifically: one, the RCMP, one, Doug Ford, the other one, the Coastal First Nations, and of course, which is, it acts as a grenade, but it's the intent with that, which that one was thrown, right, is completely different than the first two. And then, of course, President Donald Trump, or IQ 47, as we refer to him on the show, who, of course, needs to make everything about himself and found a way to insert himself into the discourse by saying things. And we will leave that at that for now. But with regard to India specifically, um, the RCMP had a couple of things to say yesterday that are probably, well, not helpful. The RCMP came up uh, with some information about the Bishnoi gang, and stated, and this is according to Stuart Bell of Global News yesterday, that an Indian gang accused of extortion and murder for hire in Canada has been, quote, acting on behalf of the Indian government, according to an RCMP document obtained by Global News. It would be interesting that this follows that interview with Mr. Patnaik, the High Commissioner on Power and Politics that I mentioned yesterday, in which still no change in position from any other interview I've seen with him over the couple of years, just denying that anything could have happened, that the government of India could have been involved in any way. It's absurd, it's preposterous, and not even really letting people speak when it comes to that, so much that they don't want the idea to be out in the airwaves, in the public sphere. But according to this article, in a report on the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, the RCMP National Security Division mentioned the crime group's alleged ties to the government of India a half dozen times in just 3 pages. So it would seem when the the High Commissioner of India comes onto the Canadian media to state that there is no evidence whatsoever, and the RCMP has worked very hard at collecting evidence, and so much so that, again, there is legal proceedings, not against the government of India, of course, but against the members the people that the suspects and people of interest that have been found in the case of the execution of Hardip Singh Nijjar. Um, the RCMP somehow I'm not sure how Global obtained the documents, but somehow documents get to the media to indicate no, 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 this is very real. Distributed internally last year, the document is a classified assessment of the Bishnoi gang's growing presence in Canada. A copy was released to Global News on Monday under the Access to Information Act. Ah, okay, that's how it was obtained. Okay, interesting. The Bishnoi Crime Group is a violent criminal organization with an active, continually expanding presence in several countries, including Canada, according to the report. Driven by greed rather than political or religious motives, the Bishnoi gang commits extortions, drug trafficking, money laundering, and contract killings, the RCMP notes. Quote, the Bishnoi crime group is known to use violence to further their criminal enterprise while acting on behalf of the Indian government, said the briefing marked Protected A. The report is not dated but refers to BC Premier David Eby's June 17, 2025 statement asking the government to list the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist organization. It was released by the RCMP on the same day Eby began a January 12th to 17th trade mission to India. Prime Minister Mark Carney also reportedly intends to visit India later this year. And that's the other element of this that is particularly either well timed if the RCMP is defending its reputation, or very ill timed considering steps being taken to rewarm the relationship with India at this specific moment. That this access to information document comes out on the very day that Premier Eby it begins a 4 to 5 day trade mission to India, certainly could not be helpful to what it is that he is attempting to do there. It is a release through access to information, so it kind of makes it, at least on the surface, appear less possible that this is a release that was strategically timed, as I would have probably suspected, but that does not necessarily mean it's the case. But yes, no, just interesting timing that the day that that particular document would be released happens to be this day. I can't say I've got anything to go on that would let me believe that there was some type of coordination. The skeptic in me would like to believe that there is no such thing, at least in political communications, no such thing as accidents. But I have to leave room for the statistical possibility that it was just time for this document to come out. I am skeptical, but I've got nothing to base that on, other than just how odd the timing is. The diplomatic push is part of a broader effort to diversify Canada's trade partnerships and offset an erratic tariff regime led by US President Donald Trump. Organizations representing Canadian Sikhs, the primary target of India's alleged campaign of violence, have protested the attempts to deepen ties with India. They accuse politicians of betraying them by prioritizing improved trade over holding India to account for its alleged assassination plots targeting South Asian Canadians. Quote, the RCMP and the Government of Canada are clearly aware that the Bishnoi gang is operating in coordination with the Government of India to target individuals in Canada, said Belpreet Singh, the World Sikh Organization of Canada spokesperson. But for political convenience, this reality is being downplayed and hidden, he said. Quote, it is deeply troubling that the Canadian government appears willing to overlook India's ongoing campaign of transnational repression and its clear links to the Bishnoi gang at the expense of the safety and security of Canadians. The Indian High Commission in Ottawa did not respond to a request for comment, nor did Carney's office. Carney has previously said the justice system was dealing with incidents of violence. Quote, the BC Premier's office referred to Eby's comments last week that a, quote, criminal process was underway and the federal government was engaged with India on, quote, issues of shared concern. Quote, our proper role as a subnational government, as a province, is to ensure we're looking after BCers and in a moment of opportunity and warming relations with India to ensure that we're benefiting from that, delivering jobs for BCers and particularly in sectors that have been particularly hard hit by Trump's tariffs like the softwood industry, he said. Concerns that India was behind acts of violence in Canada hit headlines following the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh temple leader gunned down in Surrey, BC on June 18, 2023. Nijjar was the leader of the Khalistan movement that seeks independence for India's Sikh-majority Punjab state. India had branded him a terrorist and pressed Canada to arrest him. 3 months after his killing, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told the House of Commons that Canadian authorities were investigating the possible role of Indian government agents. The 4 suspected gunmen were arrested in May 2024. Global News has reported that Canada obtained intercepted communications linking senior Indian officials to the Nijar killing. On October 14th, 2024, RCMP Commissioner Michael Duhem further warned that investigations had, quote, linked Indian officials to violent crimes in Canada. Canada expelled 6 Indian consular and diplomat officials in protest, but since becoming Prime Minister, Carney has restored diplomatic ties and said he wants a trade deal with Modi. That's the leader of India. Amid rising incidents of extortion and shootings, the Canadian government added the Bishnoi gang to its list of terrorist groups last September. The listing makes no mention of the Indian government. But the RCMP report prepared, quote, to provide situational awareness on the Lawrence Bishnoi crime group and, quote, its key individuals refers repeatedly to India's alleged association with the gang. According to the report, the Bishnoi gang got its start by using intimidation in student politics in India's Punjab and grew to include an estimated 700 members in several Indian states. Quote, the group's reach now extends across North America, Europe, and the Gulf states and other areas with significant Punjabi diaspora communities, the RCMP wrote. Although its leader, Lawrence Bishnoi, has been imprisoned in India since 2015, he has, quote, reportedly continued to run his organization while incarcerated, it said. Goldie Brar, believed to be one of Bishnoi's closest associates, is thought to have taken over the Bishnoi crime group's activities, the report added. Brar's real name is allegedly Santirdajit Singh. The report repeats RCMP allegations that Indian agents were involved in Nijar's killing. It also said the Bishnoi gang had claimed responsibility for killing another pro-Khalistan activist in Manitoba. Sukhdur Singh was killed in Winnipeg in September 2023. Like Nijar, he had been labeled a terrorist by the Indian government, the RCMP report said. He was also a member of the Bambiha gang, a rival of Bishnoi, it said. Quote, the RCMP has claimed that agents of the Indian government were using organized crime groups like the Bishnoi group to target leaders of the pro-Khalistan movement in Canada. Maninder Sikh of the Sikh Federation Canada, formed to push back against India's alleged illicit activities in the country, said government policies were endangering Canadians. Quote, the federal government and now the BC government are putting lives at risk by signing trade deals with a country like India, which has taken no responsibility or shown any remorse for their foreign interference, he said. And that information comes out just as David Eby is just as David Eby arrives for that trip. According to the government of British Columbia, when it comes to Premier Eby, says that he will lead a trade mission to India promoting British Columbia's businesses, critical minerals, and sustainable wood products, supporting work to build a more independent economy, and creating more good jobs for people in British Columbia. Quote, with unjustified tariffs from the U.S. impacting BC workers and businesses, it's more important than ever to deepen strategic relationships with international partners to attract new investment and support good-paying jobs in British Columbia, Premier Eby said. India is a key market for BC with enormous opportunities for trade. This trade mission is about deepening our relationships, supporting good jobs in BC, and strengthening our position as the economic engine of the new Canadian economy. As India moves towards becoming the world's third largest economy, the Premier will highlight opportunities for sustainable forestry, clean energy, and responsible mining through new partnerships that are available only in British Columbia. India is the world's third highest energy consumer and has a growing demand for clean technology and clean energy. British Columbia has both to offer. The mission is part of Look West Jobs and Prosperity for BC and Canada and aligns with the Look West goal of doubling exports to non-US markets over 10 years. During the mission from January 12th to 17th, 2026, Premier Eby, along with Ravi Kalan, Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth, will meet with government and business leaders in major centers of commerce and technology, such as New Delhi, Mumbai, Chandigarh, and Bangalore. Quote, British Columbia has the highest share of exports to India of any province, Kalan said. Building on our Look West plan, the trade mission to India will showcase BC's strengths in clean energy, sustainable forestry, responsible mining, and clean technology by attracting investment and reducing our reliance on U.S. markets through diversified trade partnerships. We will create good jobs and prosperity for all British Columbians. And it says here that the mission builds on BC's trade diversification strategy. Recent trade missions to Asia and Europe have showcased BC's vast range of opportunities in life sciences, technology, agriculture, forestry, ocean science, sustainability, and innovation. And then a final quote, diversifying trade and investment, securing supply chains, retaining customers, and opening new markets have always been important, but are now more urgent due to the chaotic and unjustified tariffs from the U.S., Premier Eby said. Quote, as we move forward, our government will continue to leverage BC's strengths to create more opportunities for business for businesses to export and attract investment, which means jobs, opportunity, and prosperity for British Columbians. And there you go. And a couple of some facts about BC's trade with India. In 2024, BC origin exports of goods to India amounted to $1.3 billion. In early 2023, the BC government launched the trade diversification strategy to strengthen and expand the province's trading base. The province benefits from a network of more than 50 trade and investment representatives across 14 key markets in North America, Europe, and Asia, including representatives in Chandigarh, New Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore or Bengaluru. With 18 operating mines and 2 smelters, BC produces or has the potential to produce at least 19 of the critical minerals on Canada's list and the US 2025 draft critical minerals list, including copper, germanium, nickel, and rare earth elements. So there you go. And of course, BC is the world's 12th largest natural gas producer with substantial reserves that could allow the industry to expand further. All right. So that's the India side of it. That's sort of like just slowly, just quietly playing in the background. But with China, there is a lot going on. As you know, Premier Doug Ford came out first making some statements with regard to EV batteries. And not EV batteries, sorry, I should say electric vehicles specifically. And he doesn't want the government of Canada to make any concessions whatsoever on the tariffs, unless, and he did put in the caveat, China is willing to manufacture the vehicles here in Canada. Then he might have a little something to say or be a little more open to it. There's a little here of Doug Ford about it, so I will just play this for you. Saying his concern.
I'm very concerned, and so are my friends in Michigan concerned when you have China coming in at a low cost of EVs is concerning. You know, as everyone knows, those parts go back and forth between Ontario and Michigan 7, 8 times and get assembled in Michigan or get assembled here in Ontario. And when you have the Chinese government wanting to dump cheap Chinese parts and cheap vehicles here, it cost the Canadian and American jobs. So I'm absolutely 100% dead against this.
All right. So Doug Ford once being to want to American jobs more than Canadian here, and of course not being a team player. We have to realize that yes, premiers lead for their profit. Of course, you know, if we do open the door there, it is of course going to have some repercussions. But there's no perfect deal, right? There are also tariffs on seafood. There are also tariffs on certain agricultural products. There are right and the livestock products as well. So I think there are products tariffs on seafood, on canola, various canola products, and pork specifically as a result of us coordinating with the United States under the Biden administration. Right now, we have a U.S. administration that's not particularly friendly to us, so we have less incentive to want to keep those tariffs on, with the exception of fearing retaliation, of course. But Doug Ford is basically saying here, you know, unless China is going to build some cars here, Prime Minister, throw Eastern Canada and throw Saskatchewan in particular under the bus to protect an auto industry that still may not survive in the way that we know it, given what Trump is trying to do. The Prime Minister might be seeing the advantage of taking the bird in the hand at the moment if China is offering something and the United States clearly is not ever offering anything and hasn't been for a while. right? If all the United States is offering is, yes, when you're ready to completely surrender and capitulate, we'll be happy to make you our quote unquote cherished 51st state. And that's the only deal that's really on the table, right? And we can do this the hard way or we can do this the easy way. Type thing. Well, then there's really not much incentive for us to not want to diversify, to take that risk, because we know whether or not we diversify, IQ 47 is probably going to try it anyway. So we might as well attempt to diversify, right? Um, so yeah, uh, and of course, with regard to India specifically, there is the issue of the tariff that they put on pulses. But in the case of India, it was different because that was really something that was done to protect domestic industry. I think it had, if I believe it was motivated by a very poor crop yield in a specific year. Um, and so that's a tariff that we could expect if the weather situation gets better, or whatever the internal element was that created the situation for which they needed to protect their industry on a temporary basis. When that dissipates, that tariff will dissipate as well. But that certainly didn't help with Saskatchewan. So Doug Ford here, wanting us to basically throw other regions under the bus. And then, as we mentioned the other day, Doug Ford is also doing that thing with Crown Royal, insisting that he's going to protect Ontario jobs by not allowing Crown Royal to be sold on Ontario shelves. And as you know, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario is the largest single purchaser of wine and spirits in North America. So that would be a move that appears to be a little bit of action for action's sake, because even though Ontario lost its bottling plant, the United States wanted, because of the costs with shipping bottles back and forth, and tariffs and all that type of stuff, they wanted to do their bottling of Crown Royal that is distributed in the in the United States of America, and Doug Ford lost his mind because of that. And now he seems to be on a mission to destroy Crown Royal, which is a Canadian brand. It's Canadian whiskey. It is made in Gimli, Manitoba. And then there is more Crown Royal activity in the province of Quebec. And if Doug Ford prevents Crown Royal from being sold on Ontario shelves, he is going to directly affect jobs in Manitoba and in Quebec, all allegedly to protect jobs in Ontario that are not coming back. It's not like Diageo, the company that owns all of this, is going to decide, oh, yes, we're going to rebottle back in Ontario now. That's not happening. That ship has sailed. So I don't know which jobs he is protecting here by doing this. It seems a lot of action for action's sake, primarily possibly to deflect from the fact that he's got a couple of not personal, but he's got a couple of legal issues that are affecting him. One with his phone records having to be made public because he's been using his personal phone to conduct government business pretty much since day one, almost refusing to use the government phone at all. And there's a case that has gone to the Supreme Court of Canada with regard to what he has done to Ontario Place. So he needs a couple of diversions. So that might have more to do with that than anything else, but with the Crown Royal thing. But with the EV things, he does have some legitimate concerns. Um, but again, everybody has to be a bit of a team player here. And on that front, it would seem that Doug Ford may not get what he wants here, um, because going along with Prime Minister Mark Carney to Beijing for this trip, even though I believe he was there not that long ago, is the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe. I'm not sure why Scott Moe would be going on this trip if there wasn't going to be some type of announceable along the way that had something to do with what is being grown or affected by tariffs in Saskatchewan. So, yeah, Premier Scott Moe off to China. According to CBC here, Alexander Kwan, Saskatchewan farmers are keeping a close eye on China as Prime Minister Mark Carney makes a trip to the country this week. Carney will be joined by Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe on this trip, which Carney's parliamentary secretary has said will aim to, quote, recalibrate Canada's relationship with the Chinese government and look at economic opportunities for the two nations. Bill Przybylski, president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, said he welcomes the trip as it could go a long way to addressing Chinese tariffs on canola. Quote, I think most producers are thinking it's about time that we've seen some action of the federal government, Przybylski said in an interview on Tuesday. Since March of last year, Przybylski and other canola farmers have been grappling with the decision by China to implement a 100% duty on Canadian canola products. China also slapped tariffs on pork and seafood. The tariffs were widely seen as a response to the duties the federal government placed on Chinese-made electric vehicles in 2024. Chinese tariffs have already dramatically changed the outlook for producers in Saskatchewan. Jeff English, the vice president of the public affairs for Pulse Canada, which represents growers, traders, and processors of pulse crops, says China has normally been one of the largest markets for canola, but the 100% tariff has, quote, effectively stopped the flow. That has resulted in a significant decline in the price the crop will sell for, directly hurting the pockets of farmers, Przybylski said. That in turn means tighter margins and potentially hard decisions for producers. The fact that Carney will be the first prime minister to visit China since 2017 is providing hope to farmers in Saskatchewan, Przybylski said. And the news Moe will join the delegation is only boosting confidence. Quote, I think this speaks to the fact that Premier Moe is aware of how important these commodities are, not only for farmers, but also for the provincial economy and the jobs that it creates, said Przybylski. Officials with the provincial government said Moe was already in Asia on a personal trip, which he ended early in order to link up with Carney. Moe will be joining the Prime Minister in China, according to the Premier's office. The Premier traveled to China last year as part of his efforts to have the Chinese tariffs removed. He was joined by Cody Blois, Carney's parliamentary secretary. Moe did not emerge with a deal. Although some canola farmers like Przybylski are hopeful, he's also remaining realistic about the potential outcome of this trip. This go-round as well, there's likely not much chance of there being agreement, he said. Obviously, we're continuing to hope that could be the case, but realistically, I think this exercise will just be in building those relationships. He estimates his own farmers lost about $450,000 as a result of the tariffs. With farmers already starting to plan for the upcoming season, Przybylski believes many will be keeping an eye on the travel mission to China. Quote, there's a lot of decisions that farmers have to make, and they have a lot of information and a lot of unavailable information that makes those decisions quite difficult, he said. Moe's office said he'll return to Canada next week. So it is quite possible that, as Mr. Przybylski says here, that this is, again, another meeting that establishes an important first step and doesn't come out with an agreement specifically. That is very possible. On the other side of the ledger, because China does like to move slowly. However, China is moving fast. Like I keep on saying, the fact that we're already on a one-on-one meeting with President Xi Jinping, and of course the number 2 and number 3 as well, is a big move in a short time. So there is the possibility that there could be such an announcement, and for the Prime Minister in particular, it would be very helpful to get such an announcement because you have Pierre Poilievre sniping from the sidelines. You know, where's the deals? Where's the deal? Where do you get a deal? When are you going to get us a deal? So not one single tariff has been lifted, or been decreased. If Mark Carney could get a decrease on those tariffs, particularly, and considering that it's Western Canada, that could go a long way. Could definitely go a long way. For canola farmers, there has been other good news. Back in October, at the end of October, it was reported that Pakistan would be reopening its doors to Canadian canola. Sean Pratt of the Western Producer reported at the time Canada's canola growers have regained access to what was once a significant market. Pakistan is reopening its doors after 3 years of shutting out canola and other genetically modified crops. Quote, it's very good that market access has been reestablished to Pakistan for sure, said Canola Council of Canada President Chris Davidson. It certainly has been a significant market for Canadian canola seed. Dean Robbins, chair of Saskatchewan Canola Development Commission, said it's a refreshing development. Quote, right now, any good news is welcome on the farm. Given the year we've had of bad news stories after bad news stories, any positive news at this moment helps me feel better about next year's crop. Pakistan has purchased as much as 1.35 million tons of Canadian canola in a given year. Annual imports averaged 810,000 tons between 2015 and 2020. However, in late 2022, Pakistan's Department of Plant Protection began requiring import licenses to support the arrival of genetically modified crops. The problem was the country had no system for receiving and processing import licenses at that time, so the National Biosafety Committee started developing regulations. In late 2023, Pakistan's federal cabinet approved amendments to its biosafety rules to support the import of genetically modified crops for food, feed, and processing. The government put out a notification of implementation in January 2024. The registration process was initiated shortly after that. The Canadian government worked with officials in Pakistan to provide the relevant information for Canadian genetically modified canola events. Those events were recently approved, paving the way for the issuance of import licenses to Pakistani importers wanting to bring in Canadian seed. Quote, it wasn't a short process, said Davidson. There were a number of twists and turns that impacted timelines. The Council has heard expressions of interest from Pakistani importers that will hopefully lead to requests and issuance of import license. Renewed demand from Pakistan couldn't happen at a better time because Canada shut out of the Chinese market, which bought 5.86 million tons of seed in 2024. Davison said it's too early to tell how much of that the former Chinese demand will be absorbed by Pakistan. Quote, we're going to watch to see if there's an opportunity to reestablish trade at previous levels, he said. The Council is also keeping a watchful eye on Mexico, the European Union, and Japan. Quote, we do anticipate an increase in some of those markets, said Davison. Japan used to buy more than 2 million tons of Canadian canola per year, but in recent years it has been purchasing half that amount. Davis had said there will be opportunities in other markets now that Australia and others will be servicing Chinese demand. And I have a feeling that that free trade deal that we've established with Indonesia might create another market for canola eventually. Roberts says anything that helps offset the loss of the Chinese market is a welcome development because margins on the farm are getting squeezed. Quote, as commodity prices come down, fertilizer prices didn't really follow, he said. Roberts had a decent canola crop on his farm near Colville, Saskatchewan, but he has friends who did not and are facing low commodity prices and high fertilizer costs. They're in a very bad spot going into next year's crop, he said. So that was from October 31st, 2025. Yesterday, Canada's minister, come on, work with me here. Okay, not working right. Canada's Minister of Global Affairs, International, I don't know, remember what the title is, Minister of Foreign Affairs, announced yesterday that yesterday marked the day of the arrival of the first vessel of Canadian canola to Pakistan. Good news for our economy and our farmers as it reestablishes an important market for Canadian canola producers. And the High Commissioner to Pakistan, Tariq Ali Khan, also posted about it. Says welcoming this year's first shipment, 65,000 tons of Canadian canola at Karachi Port, des champs des prairies canadiennes aux cuisines du Pakistan. So from the fields of the Canadian prairies to the kitchens of Pakistan. And here they're obviously happy that this is happening again. It's there, the first ship arriving. They've got this big banner ceremony marking the arrival of the first Canadian canola vessel, strengthening Canada-Pakistan agri-trade friendship or partnership, it says here. And then again, some of the canola. There's a lot of it in there, 65,000 tons. And there you go. So, there we go. Karachi Gateway Terminal Multi-Purpose Limited, I guess, is the port at which it arrived. And yes, a very important day there. So things are starting to look up a little bit, at least for canola farmers, with other markets emerging. And of course, if there could be a lifting or reduction of the tariffs with regard to China. or at least, if not, it's announced a schedule by which we will get there. That will bring more optimism into the market. So yeah, interesting that the premier of Saskatchewan already happening to be in Asia said, "Yeah, sure, I'll switch up my plans and join you on this." It seems that the invitation might have been. Also, that the invitation appears to be a little last minute gives me more of the feeling that there could be an announceable on that front specifically. I also saw something yesterday in the press with regard uh, to seafood and the trip. Some speculation that there could be um, some reduction on those tariffs as well. Unfortunately, I don't think I bookmarked the article, which I should have, but I will take a look just to be sure. Maybe I did it without as a matter of just habit. I did not. But yes, there was an article yesterday about seafood tariffs possibly being the ones that would be lifted first, and but now we have the premier of Saskatchewan going. So yeah, it could be that we get a lot, could be that we get a little. Uh, would be interesting to see uh, some action on that. Like I said, if we do, it would be somewhat fast that this happens. But again, the changing situation with the United States, uh, the specific timing of this announcement soon after what happened in Venezuela, the fact that um, Premier Mo seems to be joining in at the last minute, all leads me to believe that there's got to be a little something more going on than just the announcement of a progress report on this. According to the Globe and Mail, with regard to the trip, this is Stephen Chase, senior parliamentary reporter, stating Mark Carney makes his first trip to China as prime minister this week with an agenda that would have seemed unlikely before U.S. President Donald Trump took office, warming relations with the authoritarian state to a degree not seen in a decade, plus carving out a bigger role for Beijing in Canada's economy. It hasn't even been 1 year since the public inquiry's final report warned Ottawa that China is, quote, the most active perpetrator of foreign interference targeting Canada's democratic institutions. And during the 2025 election campaign, Mr. Carney himself described China as Canada's biggest security threat. And the intervention and the foreign interference is also, allegations are also common to India and China. Um, the I believe that there was many allegations with regard to India's potential involvement in the Conservative Party of Canada's leadership race, the one that made it such that Pierre became the leader, as well as all the other stuff with regard to using gangs or facilitating gangs in order to be able to commit crimes on Canadian soil, potentially for the benefit of the government of India. Again, all of these things alleged. Um, it's a significant pivot entirely because of the need to offset the economic damage that Mr. Trump's protectionist tariffs and the threats of more are doing to Canada. The last prime ministerial visit to China was more than 8 years ago by Justin Trudeau before ties between Beijing and most Western countries frayed over rising national security concerns, the Chinese Communist Party's quashing of civil liberties in Hong Kong, and its militarization of the South China Sea. Mr. Carney's entourage for the trip beginning Wednesday will include 5 cabinet members, the biggest ministerial delegation that has accompanied Mr. Carney on a foreign trip so far. That group is made up of Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, Industry Minister Melanie Joly, Energy and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson, Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald, and International Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu. The Prime Minister will meet President Xi Jinping on Friday, and of course, as we know, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe will be joining. Mr. Carney's short-term imperative in Beijing is a breakthrough in a punishing trade war triggered by 2024 Canadian tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles that prompted retaliation on Canadian agricultural products from canola to seafood. China's ambassador has made it clear Beijing would remove levies if Canada scraps the EV tariff. We showed you that on the show. There was an interview, I think it was on CTV Power Play or Question Period, with the trade representative that had indicated a few months ago that China was more than willing to consider removing some of these tariffs if we could if they could get some action on EV tariffs. So this has been telegraphed for a couple of months so far. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is joining Mr. Carney for a portion of his trip to China. The provincial government announced Monday raising expectations of a deal involving canola or other agricultural exports to China. The Prime Minister's bigger ambition is not only boosting exports to China, but attracting new capital to Canada, where foreign direct investment has slowed since Mr. Trump began talking of restricting Canadian access to the U.S. market. Mr. Carney, who has vowed to build resilience by diversifying abroad in November, spoke of welcoming Chinese investment in the energy sector, including renewable energy and battery storage. Quote, "We have to attract investment in Canadian companies. That's really the core challenge. Otherwise, talk of resilience is illusionary," said Janice Gross-Stein, the Bellsberg Professor of Conflict Management at the University of Toronto. Negotiations on deals with China are expected to continue right up to Mr. Carney's arrival in Beijing this week. One senior government official said a breakthrough that could affect canola shipments is possible, but that Canada will not strike an agreement to cut out EV tariffs if it's not sufficiently beneficial to Canada. One business executive said they had been told by Canadian officials there was a glimmer of hope for an agreement affecting EV levies, but that discussions are continuing. The Globe and Mail is not identifying the sources who are not authorized to speak publicly about the matter. The government official said the strategy is to build a fully developed relationship rather than just a series of transactions, and that the visit itself is part of that effort. Mr. Carney's challenge is rebuilding Canada's ruptured relationship with this emerging Asian superpower, while avoiding alienating Mr. Trump, who expects allies to support his tough on China agenda. The Prime Minister is aiming to open the door to more trade and investment from China, the world's second biggest economy, without jeopardizing an expected renegotiation of parts of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement this year, or sabotaging efforts to reduce punitive tariffs the U.S. president has imposed on steel, aluminium, autos, and other products. And if you've been paying attention, the President of the United States certainly didn't put anything out into the public sphere yesterday that would give Canada a reason to not consider signing more agreements with other nations. Just put it that way. The military strike on Venezuela, threats of intervention in Mexico, Cuba, or in Colombia, and coercive talk of taking Greenland are all further motivation to steer trade away from the United States. But this is also evidence of a president whose administration believes it owns the Western Hemisphere and any assets it wants. Mr. Trump's demand to take over Greenland is predicated on his claim that countries such as China will take it if he doesn't. Quote, "Carney's on a tightrope and he has... Carney's on a tightrope as he crosses the gorge. It just got a lot windier," said Fen Hampston, Chancellor's Professor and Professor of International Affairs at Carleton University. Canada-China relations are emerging from a deep freeze that analysts date back to 2018, when Beijing jailed two Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, in retaliation for Ottawa arresting Chinese tech executive Meng Wanzhou on an extradition request from the United States. However, Guy Saint-Jacques, a former Canadian ambassador to China and a 40-year veteran of this country's diplomatic corps, said the erosion of the relationship started in 2017 when Mr. Trudeau tried but failed to launch negotiations with Beijing on a free trade agreement. That was the last prime ministerial visit to China, evidence of the hardball Beijing can play. Trade talks during the 2017 Trudeau trip went off the rails after the Chinese balked at Canada's demand to include labor standards as one of the key subjects up for negotiation. By the time Mr. Trudeau's term as Prime Minister ended in 2025, a series of measures had opened up a gulf between Ottawa and Beijing. Many were taken in concert with Western allies who had recognized that China under Mr. Xi was becoming a rival, not a friend. In the name of national security, Mr. Trudeau blocked high-profile corporate takeovers by Chinese companies, including the critical mineral sector, banned China's flagship tech giant Huawei from the country's wireless infrastructure, expelled one of Beijing's diplomats, and called the Hogue inquiry into foreign interference by the Asian power. It also restricted funding for academic collaboration with Chinese military and state security institutions. Mr. Saint-Jacques says he thinks Mr. Carney is modeling his approach to China after former Prime Minister Jacques Chrétien, whose 1993 to 2003 tenure is often cited by Chinese officials as, quote, the golden decade of relations between Ottawa and Beijing. Mr. Chrétien looked for business deals in China and minimized public criticism of the country. The former Prime Minister 91 toured China this month ahead of Mr. Carney's visit, meeting with Chinese officials, including Vice President Hang Zheng and Zhu Hejing, vice governors of the People's Bank of China, in what appeared to be efforts to pave the way for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's office said Mr. Chrétien's trip was his own idea. Quote, the Prime Minister's office was informed that former Prime Minister Jacques Chrétien would be traveling to China in January on a private program, Press Secretary Laura Scafaldi said in a statement. The office exchanged views with him on the government's objectives for the Prime Minister's upcoming visit to China, and the embassy offered support where appropriate. The Prime Minister left for China on Tuesday. He arrives today, a couple of minutes ago, and will spend a couple of days there before departing Saturday. The Prime Minister is expected to meet Premier Li Qiang on Thursday and President Xi Jinping on Friday. An official dinner Thursday evening will be hosted by Mr. Li. What's driving Canada's shift in relations with Beijing is not China. It's the circumstances Canada finds itself in, said Vina Najibullah, Vice President of Research and Policy at the Asia Pacific Foundation. China, Ms. Najibullah said, has not changed. It remains a source of threats ranging from, quote, national security, foreign interference, transnational repression, and intellectual property theft, she said. As Group of 7 foreign affairs ministers said in a November statement, China remains a decisive enabler of Russia's war on Ukraine. It flouts Western sanctions to buy Moscow's petroleum, to supply parts for weapons, and through some smaller banks and money transfer systems provides financial services to Russians. Beijing is still menacing Taiwan, interfering in its politics, encircling it with military drills in the hopes of annexing the self-governed island that occupies a strategic location in the Western Pacific. It is also disrupting the international trading system with government-subsidized overproduction of products such as electric vehicles. Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs is the chief irritant in the bilateral relationship, preventing the two countries from deepening ties. Mr. Carney's options are to scrap it or pare it back to a level more commensurate with other trading partners such as the European Union or Mexico, where the maximum tariff for Chinese automakers approaches 50%. A significant drop in tariffs could also allow Chinese EV makers with their inexpensive labor costs to make inroads into Canada's auto market to the benefit of consumers, but to the detriment of other car makers. Mr. Carney could face a political backlash in Ontario, home to the majority of Canada's auto industry, and where Premier Doug Ford has publicly warned Mr. Carney against lowering tariffs. Last week, Mr. Ford suggested Mr. Carney instead invite Chinese automakers to set up shop in Ontario, building factories and employing unionized Canadian workers to make their EVs. The visit gives Mr. Carney a chance to lay the foundation of a relationship with Mr. Xi and establish a channel of communication. Mr. Saint-Jacques was present for Justin Trudeau's first prime ministerial visit to Beijing, where he met with Mr. Xi in 2016. The former envoy said it did not go well. Mr. Trudeau presented himself as someone who could help the Chinese ascend to prominence in the world, a pitch that carried the implication that Beijing had not already done so. Quote, he told Xi Jinping that as his father had helped to bring China into the United Nations, he would help China to take its rightful place on the international stage. I was there taking notes and saying to myself, Jesus Christ, what is he talking about? He said after this, Mr. Trudeau was perceived as a peewee by the Chinese government. Over the past 10 years, Canada under Mr. Trudeau blocked a slew of Chinese investments that targeted sensitive sectors in this country. Mr. Carney, eager to attract Chinese investment, is expected to provide the Chinese with more guidance on what areas they can invest in. The government official said the Prime Minister should provide more clarity on investment areas during the trip. Mr. Carney has already flagged 3 areas that will remain off limits: artificial intelligence, critical minerals, and defense-related companies. Canada is open to energy investments, but it remains unclear whether a ban on further Chinese capital in the oil sands implemented in 2012 is still in place. The Prime Minister's visit is fraught with risks, but he has little choice, analysts say. China makes up 20% of the global economy, and it's growing. Quote, it's going to be the world's largest market. There are lots of our products that they want to buy, and there's a price for selling everywhere in the world, Professor Gross-Stein said. So, interesting developments going on there. And that this article from the Globe and Mail does give a very solid overall lay of the land. I'm hoping I can find that article about seafood very soon, because I would really like to be able to read that into the record, because it's an angle we don't hear about a lot. But I will keep looking for it, kids and cubs. The other thing that may occur And I'm not sure if there will be any announcement this time or whether this is something that will be quietly done under the radar. But remember a couple of episodes ago when I mentioned Canadian oil and that China could be interested in buying it. At the time, um, basically, China buys, I think it is about, there was a number that came out that said 68%, but it's not, I had a precision. It seems that it's not 68% of Venezuelan oil that China buys, but that China um, buys about 68% of what Venezuela exports in general, I think. I think oil represents a much smaller portion. I think it's about 4% of everything that China imports of all the oil comes from Venezuela. That 4% of what China imports could still be a large chunk of Venezuelan oil. And there was some talks that China might be eyeing Iranian oil as a replacement. But with all that's going in Iran and Donald Trump maybe saber rattling there, uh, came out in the news about 2 days ago, I think it is, that, and this was in Bloomberg, that China might be rather interested in actually Canadian oil. So when I saw the numbers and started looking into that, that wouldn't it be a shame, a total shame, for if China decided that they wanted Canada to replace all the oil that they used to buy from Venezuela, that the United States does not want China to have anymore, and wouldn't it be a shame if somewhere along the way China just quiet quit that which it imports from the United States and decided that Canada can fill that gap too, because, two contracts with two nations, that's so much paperwork. And we know that we love to eliminate some red tape when we can. China imports about the same amount from the United States as it does from Canada, and we do have some excess capacity on that TMX pipeline until another one is built, if one is indeed built. And yeah, so I don't expect that there would be a big announcement maybe on that just yet, and I certainly don't expect that if China wants to supplant what it imports from the United States with what it imports from Canada, that they will be making a big announcement. That's something that will probably just slowly, quietly happen in the background along the way. But I have a feeling that even if we don't hear a lot about oil, there might be a lot of talks about oil. So uh, keep your eyes and ears peeled. But we kind of mentioned it around the 7th on the show and out on our socials. And then a couple of days later, I was like, oh, China might be rather interested in Canadian oil. And it's like, oh, well, how convenient. I have to say, I felt a little smart when I saw that happen. It's like, oh, gee, I kind of saw that coming. Yay. Whether or not it materializes is a whole other thing, but it seems that there might be some talks exploring it. With regard to seafood, it's not the article I was looking for, but there is some interesting details here. This is about from January 10th in the Toronto Star, according to the Canadian press. Nova Scotia's lobster sector is feeling the pinch from Chinese tariffs this year, but officials say exporters are starting to crack other international markets. The Lobster Council of Canada says new data shows exports outside the US and China, the sector's two biggest markets, increased about 43% in October. That's helping to cushion the blow from the 25% tariff China has placed on Canada's lobster exports. Some exporters say sales to China are off about 40% this year. Prime Minister Mark Carney is scheduled to travel to China for trade meetings with the country's president. And Chinese tariffs on lobster and canola, along with Canadian tariffs on Chinese-made electrical vehicles, are all expected to be on the agenda. So, yeah, just a little bit there, not much in the article, but it is nice to see that other markets are being found for the for those products as well, because it's important. And those other markets that we are finding are markets, hopefully, that will stay and remain as exports to China can then maybe pick up and then gain some steam, which is which would be the best thing of all, to have, once all of it's done, to have more markets overall in order to be able to serve. All right, I will keep on looking for that article, however, because I do want to bring it to you. In the meantime, kits and cubs, with regard to all of this, um, we have in Canada a whole section of politicians and people in the media, our Quisling press, that are really pushing hard um, on the concept that we really should not be doing all of this stuff with China. We should be focusing on our number one relationship, the one with the United States. That's the one that matters. Why are we wasting time with that? That again is our Quisling press. We have Brian Lilly leading the charge on that. Even Kate Harrison of Summa Strategies. Right, a lot of people are trying to talk this down. Uh, Rick Bell, columnist, just calling the trip just more globetrotting, which is like Greg McEachern states here. Glad to see such a tired lame line from Rick Bell called out on Power and Politics. Yeah, it's not. How would you put it? Uh, Not the most helpful contributions. If I'm looking at Kate Harrison, for example, um, she's got a whole bunch of other stuff, like really uh, weird stuff, not only with regard to trade, but the whole position on Greenland and that type of stuff. Um, yeah, it's like I said, just some. Uh, it's really weird to see these statements, because um, they are so obviously disloyal, as statements that one wonders very seriously about where they stand. Um, for example, this is Kate Harrison. If you are suddenly concerned that the United States might take over Greenland, just wait until you learn what Canada's latest, greatest strategic partner, China, has been up to for the last 10 years. Ooh, Prime Minister Carney is going to China. Ooh, oh, we shouldn't really deal with China. Oh my God, if you think that the United States is scary because it wants to take Greenland, China is way scarier. Ooh. Um, it's this is unhelpful. It's completely unhelpful. It's literally what the United States wants, right? The United States national security strategy is we're dominating this hemisphere. Everything in this hemisphere is to exists to support our status as the owners of this hemisphere, the people that decide everything that goes on in this hemisphere. And uh, if you do not, we want to make ourselves the most attractive trade option. And if you do not think that we are the most attractive trade option, we will get you to believe that we are the most attractive trade option by using economic coercion or even military force, or attempting to scuttle anything that you try to do to have trade relationships that are healthy and mutually beneficial with any country other than us. And you can guarantee that your trade relationship with us is not going to be mutually beneficial. right? That's the position of the U.S. government at the moment. And here you have conservatives going, "Gee, I can't believe Canada is deciding that it wants to do some trade with big, bad, evil China." I was like, have you not realized that the United States is also big, bad, and evil at the moment, right? And they're all there, you know, tripping over themselves. It's like, oh my God, like you need to focus on the United States. You need to focus on the United States. And what does Donald Trump do to help them? What does Donald Trump do to help the conservatives? Not much. He actually comes out and says that Kuzma to him is pretty much irrelevant. And once again, stating that Americans don't need Canadian products. They just need all of Canada, but they don't need our products. Okay. According to Kelly Geraldine Malone of the Canadian Press, Donald Trump, it expires very shortly and we could have it or not. Trump said while touring a Ford plant in Michigan, it wouldn't matter to me. I think they want it. I don't really care about it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Trump's statements have rattled Canada and Mexico ahead of a mandatory review this year of the future of the Continental Trade Pact. The president told reporters that, quote, Canada wants it, but the United States doesn't need anything from its northern neighbor. Quote, I don't even think about USMCA, he said with a shrug, using the American acronym for the trade agreement. I want to see Canada and Mexico do well, but the problem is we don't need their product. You know, we don't need cars made in Canada. We don't need cars made in Mexico. We want to make them here, and that's what's happening. There's no real advantage to it. It's irrelevant to me. Canada would love it. Canada wants it. They need it. It would be better if we had it, but we're going to get by one way or the other. We're actually proving right now that we can get by one way or the other. But yes, it would be devastating. But it wouldn't only be devastating for us, right? As we reported, absolutely every single business organization, group, lobbying group in the United States made it very, very clear when they testified that this is a good deal. They really rely on it, and we should keep it. So Donald Trump does a lot of things, right? You know, for example, when we have Venezuela, we're all surprised that he actually went in that quickly, and actually did it because he tends to check it out. But he also does a lot of things to sort of position himself. So just before we're going to China, well, yeah, fine. If they make more trade with China, I don't care. I don't care really. And well, you know, Kuzma, I don't really care about that. Yeah, they really want it, but I could go either way. That is um, putting the big thing on the table, pushing the big button, the thing that everybody fears, the thing that he knows that will get conservative reaction. Oh my God, Trump maybe wants to deal away with Kuzma. Oh my God, we will be so screwed. I can't believe Carney is doing to us. He's failing again. Ah, right. This is this is the art of the deal thing, right? Go out and say things, threaten to drop the biggest hammer possible on the other side so that it enters the room already afraid and go, oh, I'm sorry, sorry, please don't do that. What do you want? What do you want? We'll give you anything you want. And it's like this, if he actually did make this move, this would create so much upheaval within the United States itself. Right? Because Donald Trump keeps on talking like he does not understand that it's not that we just trade together, we actually build things together, right? The cars, the aerospace industry, all of that. We actually build things together. So when he affects our ability to be able to be as economically nimble as we would want to be, it affects our ability, joint ability, to actually build things together. Now, if he doesn't want to build things together, that's fine. He can make that decision. He's the leader of his own country. But it's going to take some time to unwind, and it's going to cause a lot of pain to a lot of people. And in the meantime, we're showing that, again, we can be nimble. The three countries have started domestic consultations on the review, and Dominic Leblanc, the minister in charge of Canada-US relations, is set to meet with US counterparts in mid-January to launch formal CUSMA talks. Leblanc said he had met with aluminium and dairy industry representatives in Montreal on Sunday as part of his efforts to hear directly from affected sectors ahead of the review. Quote, hearing directly from Canadian industries will help us ensure that the CUSMA continues to serve the interests of Canadian businesses and workers, he wrote on social media Tuesday before Trump's comments. The trade pact has shielded Canada and Mexico from the worst impacts of Trump's tariffs. The president increased duties on Canada to 35% last August, citing the flow of deadly fentanyl, but those tariffs do not apply to goods compliant with CUSMA. Canadian industries are still being hammered by Trump's separate sector-specific tariffs on products like steel, aluminium, automobiles, lumber, copper, and cabinets. The president remained committed Tuesday to his automobile tariffs, saying he wants cars to be built in the United States, not Canada. Detroit is famously known as, quote, Motor City and has served as the headquarters of the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Before Trump's tariffs, there was a long history of integration with the Canadian auto industry. Trump was also asked about raw materials coming in from countries like Canada. Quote, we have a lot of our own raw materials, he replied. CUSMA was negotiated during the first Trump administration and served as the stress test for Ottawa. The trade talks were tense at times, but ultimately the pact that replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement was hailed as a success in all three countries. Since his return to the White House last year, Trump has repeatedly questioned the value of CUSMA and has claimed the United States doesn't need anything from Canada. Trump previously called the deal transitional and said it may have served its purpose during a meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney at the White House last October. The CUSMA review essentially sets up a three-way choice for the three partner countries to make in July. They can renew the deal for another 16 years, withdraw from it, or single both non-renewal and non-withdrawal, which would trigger an annual review that keeps negotiations going. Trump's public comments signal a longer review or that the United States could walk away. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has spoken about the long-standing trade irritants that will be part of CUSMA negotiations, including the supply management system for dairy products and the alleged subsidization of the softwood lumber sector. And based on that previous point, I truly believe that unless there's like huge internal pressure from the United States, we are not going to get the full review that gets signed, sealed, and delivered and keeps the deal going for the next 16 years or so. He probably won't fully pull out because that would be just mayhem. The stock markets would plummet. And so would the bond markets. Bond markets would definitely have a lot to say. And it's going to be interesting to see what the stock market says today, what the bond market says today, because if it's just business as usual and the whole markets shrug at this thing, that would be a sign that the markets don't believe that he's really going to do this, that he has too much to lose by doing this. But that it's very likely that we go into the option that was stated here as both non-renewal and non-withdrawal, which triggers an annual review that keeps negotiations going. That'll probably be what the United States does, because they do need things from us. Absolutely, and they know it. But Trump's position is to always keep people destabilized and never offer anybody any sense of security or finality in any way, shape, or form. Always the unpredictability, the rug could be taken out from you at any time. So what better way of doing that than having an annual review in every year, coming back and trying to get the things that they want while threatening something, right? So that's pretty much what I expect will be the end result here. Let's see. U.S. Trade Representative, I think I might have read this again, but I'll get back because it starts the section here, so I'll read it again. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has spoken about long-standing trade irritants that will be part of CUSMA negotiations, including the supply management system for dairy products and the alleged subsidization of the softwood lumber sector. Greer has pointed to other non-tariff barriers like Canada's Online Streaming Act and Online News Act, as well as the provincial bans on the sale of American alcohol that were imposed in response to Trump hitting Canada with a barrage of tariffs. Greer also said the Trump administration is considering splitting up the three-way pact and negotiating separate deals with Canada and Mexico. Deals for things that they don't want to need, of course. Oh, man. So, yeah. Right? Just unhelpfully lobbing a grenade into it. I'm not sure what the president thinks he will get from that, or that he might believe that saying that type of thing might get us to panic and give up more on the first in the first round of negotiations than we would otherwise. But we don't play that game here. We have some of the best trade negotiators in the world, and we know that we've had a lot of support from industry within the United States itself. Um, it's a way to insert himself in our story once again. Um, but these types of comments only strengthen Canadian resolve. I mean, there's only so many times you can say you have nothing I need before someone says, okay, well, let's see if that's true. It's like, you can see the back of me when I walk. If you don't need anything, if you truly don't, right? There's only so many times you can say that before someone starts uh, believing you. And if Canadians are starting to believe that, okay, the United States, whether it actually needs something from us or doesn't, is going to try to arrange itself so that it doesn't ever need anything from us, either by taking us whole, which means it's now theirs, and therefore they don't need anything from us because it's theirs, or by trying to cut off all avenues to trade with them, then you know, we can sit here and cry and go, oh my God, it's so terrible. Or we could just turn around and say, okay, well, you closed the door. Let's see what windows are open. And it seems that Canada is indeed doing that. There's some really uh, good news coming up. It would appear that Canada's um, international trade, and particularly trade with the United States, um, is shifting and shifting relatively quickly. According to Dave Ljunggren of Thomson Reuters, exports to the United States in October account for 67.3% of all exports, the lowest non pandemic level since the current method of data calculation was established in 1997. Again, Canadian exports to the United States in October accounted for the lowest non pandemic level since the current method of calculation was established in 1997. The value of items sent from Canada to the United States dipped 4.1%, while imports increased by 5.3%. As a result, Canada's trade surplus with its neighbor fell to $4.8 billion from $8.4 billion in September, months after U.S. President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on a raft of imports from Canada, and Prime Minister Mark Carney stressed the need for trade diversification. Overall, Canada recorded a smaller than expected trade deficit of $583 million in October, when imports increased at a greater pace than exports, official data indicated on Thursday. That's not odd for this time of year. We tend to import a lot of things, particularly food, at this time of year because our growing season, we're not in it. Analysts had expected a $1.36 billion deficit. Statistics Canada revised September surplus up to $243 million from an initial $153 million. The deficit was the eighth in 9 months in 2025. After falling 4.3% in September, the value of total imports rose 3.4% in October. Imports of electronic and electrical equipment and parts jumped 10.2%, pushed up by record shipments of computers and computer peripherals. Exports edged up 2.1% on the strength of demand for unwrought gold, silver, and platinum, group metals and their alloys. Excluding this product group, total exports fell by 2.5%. Exports to non-US nations, and here's important here, exports to non-US nations jumped by 15.6% to reach a record high, pushed up by shipments of gold to Britain and oil to China. The release of the data was delayed from the planned December 4 due date due to a prolonged US government shutdown. November's data is due to be issued on January 29th. So yeah, Canadian trade to countries that are not the United States is at a record high. According to Statistics Canada, in October, Canada's merchandise imports increased 3.4%, while exports were up 2.1%. As a result, Canada's merchandise trade balance with the world went from a small surplus of $243 million in September to a deficit of $583 million in October. Let's see, what else do we have here? in this, according to Statistics Canada. Let's get back here. Again, as mentioned in the article, following 3 consecutive monthly declines, imports from the United States increased 5.3% in October. Meanwhile, exports to the United States were down 3.4%, partly because of lower exports of aircraft and unwrought gold. Exports to the United States were down 4.1% in the first 10 months of 2025 compared with the same period in 2024. Canada's trade surplus with the United States narrowed from 8.4 billion in September to 4.8 billion in October. And here there's a graph of our merchandise trade with the United States that I will show you here. And that way you can look at these numbers. And here, the darker blue line is our exports to the United States. And you can see here in the billions of current dollars, it hit $6.6 billion in January 2025, which is a high since 2021, dropped to 41.9 billion in April of this year, which is the lowest in this entire period, and has started slowly climbing back to 44.1, the latest data is from October. In terms of our imports from the United States, however, you can see that they have also dropped. They reached a high of 43.8 billion current dollars, very close to the same time that we reached our high in our exports to the United States. And then you can see that that trade has also dropped a lot. And now our imports from the United States have dropped to 39.3 billion. So we are we're exporting less, but we're also importing less. Now, if we look at this graph as well, with trade with countries other than the United States, you can see here imports from countries other than the United States. So our imports are really going up. Back in October 2021, we imported about 23 billions of current dollars worth of merchandise from countries other than the United States, and we're up to 26.9 now. But our exports to countries other than the United States, in October 2021, it was 13.9 billion dollars of current dollars, and we are now at 21.5. And you can see a very market increase since February 2025, where we exported 14.3 billions of dollars to countries other than the United States, and we are now at 21.5. We're getting close to doubling that, and we have done that within the space of February, October, about 10 months. So our strategy of diversifying trade is working, and we are doing it at a relatively rapid pace. Even I think there was some data I saw not too long ago. I think it was Mr. Grizzly who had it on one of his Grizzly Growls that showed that I think it was exports to the United States had dropped by $12.6 billion in the period that was assessed on that graph, but exports to countries other than the United States were up 16.1. So we were net positive despite that which Donald Trump was trying to do with us. So yeah, there are some glimmers of hope here that the strategy is indeed working, kits and cubs. So we talked about Doug Ford, we've talked about Donald Trump, we've talked about the RCMP throwing a couple of grenades into the trade thing. The other one comes, and this one is completely different than the other ones, right? But this one comes from the coastal First Nations specifically, because the Prime Minister went there on his way to China. He stopped there and had meetings with them. And it's not a grenade in the sense that it blows something up. It's just that it's going to make a certain situation probably more difficult than people would have liked it to be. That the Prime Minister has signed with Daniel Smith does not mandate necessarily that the pipeline that is built goes to northern BC. It is a pipeline to the coast, basic to the west coast. So it could be anywhere. So it could be another pipeline that runs alongside the TMX one that already exists to get to the port of Vancouver again. There could be some dredging of that port to allow bigger ships to uh, be able to navigate there. And the trade could happen that way. It could go to another place within British Columbia. There might be other communities that will be more welcoming of it. But um, how would I put it? Um, but the idea that it necessarily has to be through that particular port and then through that area where there is going to be a lot of activity, uh, that does not necessarily have to be the case here. So there are options for the Canadian government. The deal is not necessarily dead just because this. So here I want to present to you a little bit of an interview that has taken place on Power and Politics yesterday with Coastal First Nations Vice President Gagwis Jason Alsop, and that explains very very much what it is the position is, and explains that shows that um, this group is not against increased trade, is not against development, but it basically comes down here to um, these groups of First Nations trying to explain to everybody else involved is like, you don't understand. It's not about the increased opportunities. It's not about the money. It's not about anything of the sort. Science indicates that if there is such a spill, there is no way to fully clean up that spill. And all it takes is one, and our way of life is ruined forever. So, we don't know how many times we need to say this to you. That is not on the table. That is a risk we are not prepared to take. There is no amount of money or additional opportunity, all that kind of stuff that makes that an appealing offer. If the risk is potentially losing our way of life, sorry, that's a deal we just cannot sign. And it's kind of hard to find an argument against that, right? Now, we know that in the more hardcore conservative circles, no appears to be just an invitation to try again or try harder. But it's been over 50 years of no, and it has not changed, and it is not going to change. And they've made it very clear. So, unless we're going to pull a Pierre Poilievre and say, well, the final decision rests with me, and even if there are First Nations objections, I'm building that pipeline. I'm going to make it cross their territory, whether they scream or howl or whatnot, because it's in the national interest, and I have the power to do so. So I'm going to use it. Okay, and then good luck getting investment to that pipeline, because you know that there is going to be tons of action on the ground to try and stop that. There will be legal action galore. You will have protesters. It does create the situation that could invite some eco-terrorism. But you're going to have a very, very hard time building that. And that's going to create a lot of uncertainty. And that is going to make it much less likely that somebody's going to be able to bring a proponent. So if they want the pipeline, uh, at least the Premier of Alberta might have to not be so picky as to where the export terminal is actually located. Now, if it's somewhere near Vancouver, it might be possible. If it has to be in a whole new location where you have to build a whole bunch more infrastructure, well, that makes the project much more expensive and therefore perhaps less feasible. So there's a lot of things to consider. But here, let's take a moment to check out this interview and what here is being said.
We begin in British Columbia, where today Prime Minister Mark Carney met with coastal First Nations to discuss major projects. The meeting comes after the federal government signed a memorandum of understanding with Alberta, which includes a path forward for a possible oil pipeline and the lifting of an oil tanker ban along BC's north coast. Gagwis Jason Alsop is president of the Haida Nation, and he joins me now. Gagwis, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hi, David. Good afternoon. Good to be here.
Based on your comments when you came out of the meeting, it's very clear your position hasn't changed on an oil pipeline. I'm curious whether the Prime Minister or anyone else tried to convince you to change your mind in your conversations today.
No, it was a very productive meeting with the Prime Minister today. And like he said, it was really about building relationships and starting a face-to-face dialogue around areas that we can find alignment and where we can work together amongst the coastal nations and Canada.
Where were things, though, on the idea of the bitumen pipeline to Prince Rupert, of lifting the tanker ban? Because the Prime Minister, his key ministers, members of the government talk about this as a national imperative, the need to get this economic activity in the face of what Donald Trump is doing. What was the message from the government to you and the others in the room on that front today, sir?
Well, the message from the government was that, there is a commitment to building a relationship, to the journey of reconciliation and finding areas of alignment. I think there was also more clarity from the Prime Minister's office around his major projects office and his process for how that work is to unfold, and some productive discussions around what that looks like in terms of free, prior and informed consent and UNDRIP and how that could be done in a way that does seek consent.
So what clarity did they give you on that front? Because I know this has been something people are wondering about, right? That consultation is not a veto, and approval and consent are consultation and consent are different things, is how a lot of people are talking about it. How did the Prime Minister explain to you today how he views those principles?
Well, obviously there's a legal requirement to consult and accommodate as the bare minimum, but ultimately that we need to work together and that we need to form relationships, and that we were clear about our position that we would like the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act to stay in place, but there are other things we got to look at in terms of the other nation building projects that were announced and the impacts those have on the territory and the positive work we could do together. And I think it was clear that just because projects do make that list, there still is a process to go through. There's still a lot of work to actually get to a project delivery. And although there's need for action to respond to the economic challenges, there's still process, there's still due diligence and a lot of good work that needs to happen.
There were some measures today based on the statements coming from both sides of the conversation on extending funding for the Oceans Protection Plan, Reconciliation Framework Agreement, extending the leases on towboats, for lack of a better term. These sorts of things to focus on coastal protection in the wake of the concerns of the increased economic activity from the other projects. But what was your sense, Gagwis, on how determined the federal government is to see a pipeline that goes to the northwest coast? Did you get the sense that this is a true imperative and priority for them, or an option they are merely considering?
Well, we focused again on the areas of alignment. My sense is it is, obviously it's an option and was put on the table in the MOU with Alberta, and something considering the challenges, economic challenges in the relationship with the United States is something he needs to consider to be a responsible leader. But ultimately we focused a lot of the dialogue around, again, these other nation building projects that were announced, and really making clear that outside of the pipeline, with existing projects, existing shipping traffic, and the proposed increases exponentially over 217% in the coming years, the coast is not prepared for the existing traffic, let alone introducing something like bitumen tankers.
So in terms of dealing with that issue, because I know this was a concern you raised when we last spoke, I believe when you were here for the vote on the on one of the pipeline votes in Parliament, beyond the expansion of the funding for the protection plan, what sort of progress are you going to see, do you think, or were you promised coming out of this on those areas of alignment to better protect the coastline from what's going to be pretty robust activity, whether or not there is a pipeline?
Yeah, well, we'll leave it up to the government to make their formal announcements on things, but I think what was landed from our side was for him to get grounded in the coast, in the realities that we face as coastal communities, as nations, and to understand that that work is imperative. So it does allow us to be able to actually implement the agreements that we already have in a hopefully a faster and a more effective way to address our current challenges and prepare for future increases in shipping. So I think it was, as he said, it was a relationship building meeting. It wasn't about big announcements and that work necessarily, but obviously we touched on these existing agreements and the work we have to continue to invest in addressing the existing shipping traffic, as well as implementing marine protected areas along the Haida Gwaii North Coast and Central Coast.
So where does this relationship building go from here? I know this was the first face-to-face, and they came to you on the way to China, which I know was an important thing to see happen. What's the next step? Presumably, this is not a one-off, that there will be more meetings. Where does it go from here, Gaguis?
Well, it was an important sign of respect by Prime Minister Carney to accept the invitation that we were making, well, we've made personally and publicly in response to the MOU. Next is to follow up on the discussions and the commitments that were made to really pick up the pace of implementation of our agreements and move that work forward. And, as that begins to accelerate and unfold, we will need to be in constant dialogue and checking in as the nation building projects on the major projects list continue to progress, and ensure that there is good communication and this relationship continues to build as those processes unfold.
Okay, I know you said you wanted to leave it to the government to announce what they've decided on. I'm not trying to trap you or trick you, because they've sent us a statement, and they talk about the Prime Minister committed to renewing funding for the ocean protection plan that we talked about and coming back with something in 26-27, reaffirm the commitment to conserving 30% of land and water by 2030, including working with the First Nations on identified marine protected areas in the Great Bear Sea. And to strengthen ocean protection, they will also fund a marine traffic risk assessment study, extend the leases of 2 emergency towing vessels until 2028, and ensure that towing capacity is consistent with shipping activity. Does that cover it, or is there more to come beyond that from today?
That does cover most of what was discussed today, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that those are, really pre-existing agreements and arrangements that this government is now really committing to. It is work that has been well underway, that that the nations have been leading and working with BC and Canada, but this will allow us to continue that work, but also the Prime Minister's commitment to, make it a priority and to speed things up. He is an action. He's spoke about leading with action and results, and that's what we expect to see in implementing these agreements and being able to see those improvements on the ground in our ability to respond and look after our ocean territory.
So just as a final question before I let you go, there has been some criticism of the way this Prime Minister and the government under his leadership have approached issues with First Nations and Indigenous peoples in terms of consultation and meeting. But it sounds like today, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm wrong, that you felt respected and heard today. Do you feel better about things? Am I understanding this correctly?
We do. I think we see it as a sign of respect, and I think it's really important and for us, and we shared with the Prime Minister our respect for leadership, for the leadership challenge that he faces in keeping the country together and responding to economic challenges and addressing the budget and trying to make sure that, you know, all of there's fragile systems right now, the economic system, ecosystems, relationships with each other, relationships between the province and the federal government, relationships with Indigenous people. So we understand the complexity, the challenge he faces, and he got out the gates, trying to show that action and having to travel the world and do everything, perhaps wasn't able to make those early contacts, but, we're here now, and this reconciliation process is a journey. It's not a transactional relationship. It's something that we all need to commit to and keep working on to adapt to the challenges we all face.
Gagwis,
see the opportunity.
Right. Yeah. Well, Gagwis, it was good to see you again. It's good to speak with you again. This is Gagwis, President of the Haida Nation. Thank you for your time on a busy day, sir. We appreciate it.
All right, David. Take care.
All right, kids and cubs. So there you see, we're not talking about people who are taking completely unreasonable expectations. We're not talking about people that are seeking to block every single initiative. This gentleman making it very clear that there's a lot of traffic already in the region, with a lot of increased traffic based on all the other projects and deals that they are talking about putting together that is going to happen. If you are going to add tanker traffic for oil, and again, the fact that you cannot clean it up if there is a mess, you have a whole other situation on hand. That's a whole other kettle of fish for this group, and they're just not down with it. They never have been, and they are not going to be, and that is just a reality. So it seems like there is a bit of a non-starter here with regard to that being to the export terminal being in the specific spot that Danielle Smith would like it. So there might have to be some adjustments here that we are looking at a different endpoint for the particular pipeline that people are talking about here. And of course, it seems here that there was some type of agreement, at least with regard to preserving and conservation, and perhaps increased investment in potential mitigation with regard to the increased traffic that's already planned in case there's some type of accident of that type of sort along with it. I'm just going to look to see if there's another article, because I assumed it would have been in the politics section, but it could have been in the Canada or the national section here, because I'm not seeing a lot of news articles. I would say I'm seeing a lot of news articles about the meeting, pre-meeting. I'm not seeing a lot of them about the meeting post what was ultimately agreed to, other than the interviews that we saw. So I'm just going to take a little look here. But right now, I'm not seeing anything off the top of. Oh, there we go. maybe afterwards. Yes, there we go. This is according to Tom Summer of CBC. Prime Minister Mark Carney met with coastal First Nations in Prince Rupert, British Columbia today, discussing major projects in the region, including the possibility of an oil pipeline from Alberta. Ahead of his meeting with leaders, Carney told reporters it was about building and development, but also conversation. Quote, not just building, but how we build and how we build together, he said, and also making it clear that he wasn't expecting some big agreements or announceables from this particular meeting. It's a dialogue of what's been happening in the region, the projects that have been led by the various First Nations here, the various opportunities that do exist, the imperative of conservation. Coastal First Nations President Marilyn Slett says just one oil spill would destroy their way of life. The group of 9 First Nations remains strongly opposed to a pipeline to BC's coast. Quote, it is very important that the Prime Minister see our territories and understand our concerns. Coastal First Nations, along with Lax Kw'alaams and the Haisla Nation, oppose any project that proposed to bring oil tankers to the north coast. That's a quote. Slett said she's looking forward to partnering with the federal government to help facilitate projects that support marine protection and sustainable economic development. Quote, there's no technology that can clean up an oil spill at sea, she said. Pretty clear here. Last year, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Ottawa and Alberta, including a path forward for a possible oil pipeline and the lifting of an oil tanker ban along BC's north coast. Pardon me, I just have to clear my throat here. All right, thank you for that. Right, where was I in that article? Just gonna make sure. Okay. On the streets of Prince Rupert, outside a hotel, roughly a dozen people gathered to show their solidarity with the Coastal First Nations' opposition to pipelines. Arnie Nagy, a member of the Haida Nation, is among those who want Carney to keep the oil tanker ban in place. Quote, we have rights and our other sister nations have rights on their unceded territories, and those rights aren't going to be overrun in the name of greed, he said. He's supposed to represent the people, not major oil corporations. Art Sterrett, a member of the Gitgat Nation and a former spokesperson for the Coastal First Nations, he spoke to the CBC News ahead of the meeting and was among the crowd of demonstrators. The Prime Minister has made a serious mistake. He's broken the law by coming to an agreement with Alberta on a route to get oil to BC, said Sterrett. He should have talked to the First Nations first. A BC oil spill would be environmentally devastating to keystone species, he added, referencing the destruction to Alaskan waters from the 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill. Quote, they're proposing to put tankers into an area that has all of those species still here, said Sterrett. So there you go. Hopefully, there would be a little more on what was agreed conservation-wise with between the federal government and those coastal First Nations. Let me check out APTN News, because why not go to the source here? This is Leanne Sanders. Says here, the president of Coastal First Nation says she delivered a firm message to Prime Minister Mark Carney at a meeting Tuesday morning that they're standing firm against a pipeline to the northwest coast of British Columbia. Quote, anytime there's a discussion about our territories, we need to be in the room, Slett said, of why they invited Carney to join them in Prince Rupert. And here, kids and cubs, pardon me, excuse me again. Sorry, really have something stuck in my throat here. Here is a clip of Miss Slett specifically making these comments, because I think we should hear from her as well. So let's open that up here and give you the full screen. Make sure we have some volume, and here we go.
This morning, our Coastal First Nations communities invited the Prime Minister here. We wanted to reiterate that anytime there is a discussion about our territories, that we need to be in the room, and that it is very important to us that the Prime Minister see our territories and understand our concerns. And that is why our leadership invited him to sit and meet with us directly. So today we heard directly from the Prime Minister that his government will seek our free, prior, and informed consent regarding any proposed projects in our territories, and that we will co-develop a transparent process moving forward. We are looking forward to partnering with the federal government to help facilitate projects in our territories that support sustainable economic development and marine protection. We also made our positions very clear and reiterated those positions around our stance regarding the oil pipeline, and that has not changed. Coastal First Nations, along with Lax Kw'alaams and the Haisla Nation, oppose any project that proposed to bring oil tankers to the North Coast. We reiterated that there is no technology that can clean up an oil spill at sea, and that it would take just one spill to destroy our way of life. We shared our reliance on a healthy and intact ocean and our determination to protect the ocean and the ecosystem that we rely upon. And it's a reliance not just on coastal First Nations, but Canadians and British Columbians. The Hecate Strait is known as the fourth most dangerous body of water in the world and experiences wildly unpredictable weather and extremely dangerous conditions. And we shared that, and we talked about that, our leadership behind us here and our hereditary leadership. We had many people with us in the room to bring that message forward. The tanker ban is not partisan legislation. It is the result of 50 years of consultation and engagement with our coastal communities, and it is foundational to keeping our coast healthy and our economy strong.
So there you have it, kids and cubs. Miss Slett making the position unambiguously clear. And therefore, it's looking like another path will be needed if the goal is to export more oil through the West Coast. All right, kits and cubs, I believe that's everything I have for you today. Well, actually, that's not true. There's so much more. I could probably do a whole other episode with a whole bunch of other news that's not just specifically trade with India related, and how various things in Canada domestically are happening to complicate things. This is a trip that Prime Minister Carney is on, in which whatever decisions make, whatever announcements are made, he is going to be disappointing someone. Right? If there are reductions of EV tariffs and there isn't a commitment to build cars, paying Canadian employees here to do that, and I just read a comment from one of the kits there stating that the main Chinese auto manufacturer for EVs, I can't remember the name, BVP, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong on that one. But that company has sold more electric vehicles around the world than Tesla has for the first time. So like I said, they are becoming much more prevalent throughout the world, and North America is like this little place because of all that we had that was less accessible to them and could be more so. But there might not be a lot of jobs because it seems that a lot of the construction is automated. That would BYD it is. So yeah, that would even if Doug Ford got them to set up here, would there be that many jobs really? Is one of the questions here. So yeah, we have to. There's a lot of pieces, but any move on that front is clearly going to make Doug Ford unhappy. If we keep those EV tariffs at 100% for something that it seems that we're not getting a lot of benefit from the United States, there might be some reaction then from the agricultural community and the seafood, the fishers, the fishermen, and all that community. And if that is done, if anything is done with China, then we might get some reaction, of course, from Donald Trump. So the prime minister is walking a tightrope. There's no way to come up with anything that is going to make everybody happy. So he's got to walk a fine line. This is a prime minister, however, who has shown in the past that that's something he doesn't seem to particularly fear, because negotiating that MOU with Alberta first before going out, passing C5 first before going out to consult. All of these things have required the prime minister to actively be okay with certain trade-offs. When he signed that MOU, there's a certain environmentalist vote that was clearly not happy. When he signed that MOU, Quebec clearly was not happy. He was making some trade-offs and putting some political capital on the line. So if he does make a decision to reduce EV tariffs somewhere along the way, if we do get it announceable on canola, we are going to have some people who are unhappy. And if we don't, we are going to have some people who are unhappy. So be prepared for a lot of that screaming and crying and yelling after when we start getting some announceables, if there are indeed any. And at some point, a couple of days later, we're going to get some people that are starting looking at the global view and not just each provincial view, and seeing whether or not this is on a good path one way or the other. And we always have to remember in the back of our minds here that while China may want some deals on this front, the United States, the partner that everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, hey, why are you neglecting this relationship and focusing on China? You should be doing the other thing, is with a country that literally has said many times, including just yesterday, that we have nothing they need. A country that is not a rational actor at the moment, whose word appears to be nothing, whose signature on a document appears to mean nothing, and that has actively stated that they want to annex us, and has taken steps in our hemisphere to go into a country and decapitate it already. So, maybe it is time for us to consider that, as horrible as China is, that our bread might be slightly better buttered on that side. Because if we're talking about moral actors in the United States, in Russia, in India, in China, we don't have one anymore. There isn't one. The whole part of the political and media spectrum that keeps on saying, oh my God, you have to preserve the relationship with the United States, has not yet brought itself to be able to publicly admit that the United States is a problem. And if it is a problem, it's not just a minor irritant, it is now become a problem on the same level as they traditionally viewed China and India. It is not a reliable partner. It is not an ally. It is a country that has expressed explicit intent to do us harm. Imagine if you are married to someone, right? And you're at this cocktail party, and some cute young thing comes along and starts flirting with your partner, right? Your partner's not into it, but they're flirting away, flicking the hair, giggling, touching the bicep. Ooh, it's so strong. Or wanting, constantly eyes down, looking at the girls rather than at the eyes, and oh, that's such a beautiful necklace. Where did you get that? Right? All that flirting. And then your partner goes and grabs you some drinks, and while you are alone, the person looks at you straight in the eye and says, "I know you've been married for 24 years and you think you're happy, but I am coming for him. I am going to displace you." This person is literally announcing, I intend to be a threat to your relationship. You might want to handle that. You might want to let that cute young thing know that 24 years together or something comes with a lot of intangibles, right? That person, as long as they live, will never outrank you or be better than you in so many of the things that make a relationship that you basically send them on their merry way and make it very clear that they are welcome nowhere where you are, and especially nowhere where your partner is. And make sure that they understand that in a very crystal manner. So we have a segment of Canadian society that is not willing, either because their paychecks depend on it or because they are motivated by fear, their fear of losing what they have and don't want to take the risk, or for whatever motivations that they have. But they are not on board and will not be on board and will actively try to disturb whatever progress that we make. But the truth is that our former number one ally is not the person that they used to be. And they've changed, and therefore we must too. And we need to stop looking at them with the same eyes that we were looking at them in 1980, 1990, 2000. Because the world has changed, and so have they. And they are now saying that Canada, you and your sovereignty, we know that you've got a thing, you and your constitution, we know that you've got a thing, but we're here to tell you that we believe that we're a better thing, and we are going to actively try to separate you from your sovereignty or your constitution. I said, we have been one of the only countries in the world that have said, we don't think so. And that we are taking steps to make that happen. But said it requires an all hands on deck effort, and it requires everybody to be on Team Canada. And it does require sometimes in your respective smaller jurisdictions or subnational jurisdictions that you might have to take one for the team. And it certainly doesn't help when you have a whole machinery here that is extremely well funded, trying to tell us how any step away from the United States, any step to diversify, to assert our independence, to show that we have an independent foreign or trade policy, is something that is terrible and will lead to our ruin. At some point, you have to tell that nagging little voice to just shut up. Maybe just feed it some chocolate and keep it busy for a while. Oh, here. Oh, you again, nagging. Here, have an apple. Here, have a bushel. Just munch on that for a while. Let the grown-ups do the work here. All right, kids and cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you include a little word of your own about why it is our content resonates with you. Kids and cubs, hopefully soon we will have our audio podcasts available again. That's podpage.com/the sponsored by the Ray Girl, with the hyphen between each one of those words, of course. And when you go there and click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it will come directly to you. In the meantime, however, if you would like to help us, please take a trip down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where Kits, Elaine, and Cassie will certainly be very happy that you have come there to smash with our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little click. It makes us very happy when you do, and it helps us with the algorithm. So thank you for that. And if you would like to help us in other ways, let's say with the costs that we incur to bring this show to you, then we would be very, very grateful for your support in the form of a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, where every day we fight the scourge that is dry beaver. Oh my God, no, we can't have that. Had that a couple of times on the show today, and we had to interrupt the flow. We can't have that. So a couple of loonies or toonies in our tip jar goes a long way to ensure that that does not happen. So, kids and cubs, all your generosity, of course, is very much appreciated. We also have Super Chat, and we also have memberships on our YouTube channel. And of course, if you are doing the Buy Canadian thing, which we hope you are, you can donate by making a direct bank-to-bank transfer to our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Send us a little something there, and that way the US CE Tech Bros do not get a share of your donation. No, that share goes to us, which means you get more beaver bang for your beaver buck, and that is always a very, very good deal. At least we think so. We're not necessarily the most objective about that, but we think so. Thank you for all you do to support the show. And remember, kids and cubs, if you're not able to contribute financially, you can still contribute to the show by writing to us at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com to let us know what you think about the show, to offer us suggestions for guests, and offer us some articles that you think we should read, all that good stuff. We want to hear from you. If you've got some good news, Kit Linda, I'm really hoping that the anniversary celebrations went well. All the best. Like you said, I love love, so I have to absolutely celebrate it. And I believe, if I am not mistaken, Kit Jillian asked me a while ago on the 7th. I was going back through the shows and reading some past comments to give a shout out to a vet who was celebrating their 100th birthday on that day. I do not know if Kit Jillian is in the chat, but if you are and want to mention them here, I would be very happy to mention it. A little late, but a shout out is a shout out. And I believe that Kit Jillian is indeed here because I just saw somebody send her something in an interaction. So please, if you have it, I will keep my eye on the chat in order to be able to give that shout out that you requested. I believe that there was something else going on, but I can't find it off the top of my head here. So maybe that would be the only one, but I thought there was another little bit of damn fam news here that I wanted to bring to you. So yes, please do write to us. We love to hear from you. And if you want to reach us via our socials, at True Eager on the Jitter at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. Right down here in the comments section, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, we also have the Instagram that is run by Kit Uncover and the unofficial Damn Fam Discord, where the conversation keeps going. You can have more time with the wonderful members of the Damn Fam when there's not a show on by going there. And hopefully members of the Damn Fam will post that link in the chat so that you can find it and go join there. Lots of opportunities to keep the fun and the conversation going once our shows are over. So please take advantage of them. And kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do, remember that if you live on Prince Edward Island, on the 7th of February is when you will be voting for the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of British Columbia. Not British Columbia, Prince Edward Island. That's twice I do that. I do that 2 days in a row that I say British Columbia when I intend to say PEI. I think it's because they're both, we refer them as BC and PEI, and that's why I keep on mixing them up. That has to be it, because there's no reason. They're just clear at opposite ends of the country. But remember, if you are also on PEI, the first leadership forum is taking place tonight at the Consolidated Credit Union Place in Summerside. So either tune in to that or go in person if you can. And remember that the 16th, Friday, is the last day to join the party to vote. So please get your applications in so that you can cast your vote for that leadership race. We have a couple of candidates. Rob Lance, who was serving as the interim premier and stepped down in order to be able to run in this race, is in there. Mark Ledwell, who's a lawyer and former managing partner at Gowling WLG. And he has advised on issues related to finance, infrastructure, energy, and agri-food. He declared in May that he was running. So right now, from what I can tell, there are two candidates in the race. And then we had a couple people that had, one person that had withdrawn, that has withdrawn, Corey Deagle, who is the Minister of Fisheries and Communities. He announced, declared in February of 2025, but withdrew in October from the race. So it looks like we do have two candidates for that. All right. And of course, we have our two petitions that we have been circulating. House of Commons petition E6821 to to encourage our MPs to introduce legislation that would make it such that Canadian media should be owned by Canadians and operated by Canadians for the best interest of Canadians. And on that one, we are now at 11,199 signatures. And our other House of Commons petition, E7027, which is a petition to encourage the House of Commons to invoke Section 90 of the Constitution Act of 1867 and its disallowance clause to stop the provinces of Saskatchewan and Alberta specifically from removing the most basic fundamental rights away from the transgender community. And that one is now at 28,513 signatures. And very much, I personally would very much appreciate your signature on that as a member of the rainbow community who does have friends and people I care about in the transgender community. I personally would be grateful for your signature on this petition because we need allies. We need a lot of allies there. We're talking about a group that is very, very small and that is very easy to spread information about, and a lot of people to adopt the attitude that I don't understand it, therefore I must fear them. And we should not be fearing each other. So kids and cubs, if you can indeed put your signature to that petition, it would mean a lot to me personally. Because again, these are my brothers and my sisters. These are your brothers and sisters too. And, again, none of us are free unless all of us are free. And right now, there's a lot of people that want to restrict our transgender brothers and sisters' ability to even exist in public space. And we can't have that. We can't be treating each other that way. Not as fellow citizens. We just can't. Not even as fellow human beings, but especially as fellow citizens, we do have an obligation to each other. So if I could please again ask for your signature on that, it would mean the world to me. All right, kits and cubs, words of wisdom. Hey, right now I'm going to take some curling advice for us. We're on a winning streak, so just if things are going well for you, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep your head up. So that you don't get your bell rung, but keep doing what you're doing. If it's working for you, don't change anything. There you go. Consistency matters. All right, kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, if you would, it's time for a little audience participation. My second favorite part of the show. My favorite part of the show, of course, is saying good morning to all of you because we get to spend some time together. But now, kids and cubs, can you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear it. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. That is definitely the good stuff. Here you go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. We back yet? There we go. I'm not sure if I was delayed coming back, so I will repeat that just in case. Kids and Cubs, before we go, a little bit of, oh, we got some weird eyebrow stuff going on right there. A little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud. Of course, as you know, I'm a big tennis fan. So at the Australian Open qualifications, Liam Drexel has taken one step closer to making his first ever Grand Slam appearance, winning his second round match in straight sets, 7-6, 7-3 in the tiebreak, and 6-3, and goes on to the final round of qualifications in the tournament, where he will be taking on an American whose last name is McDonald. I'm going to guess Mackenzie McDonald. Yes, that is indeed who it is. Slightly higher ranked. So if Drexel can get this three, it would be a slight upset, and it would be his first Grand Slam main draw appearance to play for on this, and hopefully it will indeed go well. Carson Branstein on the women's side unfortunately had to retire from her match along the way, so she will not be qualifying. And Sitch, who was instrumental when Canada won the Billie Jean King Cup a few years ago to Team Canada, defeated her opponent in the second round match rather decisively, actually. It was Teodora Kostovic of Serbia, and Marijana Stekusic handled her in straight sets. I believe the score was 6-0 and 6-2. So a very by her, and she will be playing her final match of the qualification round against someone from the People's Republic of China, who is lower ranked. So Stekusic should, if everything goes according to the statistics, qualify, named Julien, who's at around the world. So hopefully we will have two additional Canadians in the main draw here at the Australian Open based on the qualifications. Of course, yesterday also, there is the World Junior Hockey Championships for the women under 18, and Canada was playing its final round robin match against Sweden. A very healthy victory, 9-2. So Canada does finish in first place in their pool. The United States is first place in the pool in other pool, and they will be advancing to the playoffs, where they probably will meet in the final, but Canada will be taking on Finland in the first round of the quarterfinals, and the United States will be playing Hungary. For some reason, we ended up in the same half of the draw, so it is not looking likely that there will be a Canada-US final here, because they will be meeting in the semifinals rather than the final. I'm not exactly sure how it is that the draw got placed, that the two first place finishers are in the same half of the draw. That seems a little weird to us here. So maybe that is not, maybe that's just a listing and it's not a draw as it is. I'll have to take a double look here. The other matchups are the USA versus Hungary, Sweden versus Slovakia, and Czech Republic versus Switzerland. So those are your top 8 teams here at the moment. And that's all we have for you at the moment. We'll just check to see. There might be a day off today from play before they start that. Yep. So there will be no matches today at the Women's World Juniors, and the next match will be Thursday, and Team Canada will be playing its match against Oh, I just had it right here and I lost it. Against Finland at 7:30 in the evening Eastern time, if you want to tune into that. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I have for you today. Amour et bisous. And we will see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay warm. Cuddle. Have a snuggle. All right. And I'm gone.